Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're unpacking the absolutely wild, high-risk history of how a scorching desert village completely transformed into a global megacity. We're looking at a story of ultimate survival, massive gambles, and some seriously brilliant pivots. To really understand Dubai, you have to look right past that ultra-modern skyline of glass and steel and understand how a barren stretch of sand defied all geographic odds.
To really get this, we've got to set up the ultimate mystery. Picture Dubai back in the 1940s. We're talking a collapsed economy, where roughly 20,000 people lived in mud brick houses along a shallow creek. They were battling 110-degree heat with no shade, no air conditioning, nothing. Fast forward to today, and that exact same patch of sand is a $116 billion playground for the global elite. We're talking indoor ski slopes, man-made islands, the tallest skyscrapers on Earth. So how did they pull it off? If you ask almost anyone, they'll tell you they know the answer: oil.
But we need to shatter that myth right now, because Dubai is right there in the Arabian Gulf, surrounded by these incredibly wealthy petrostates. It's so easy to assume it's just another oil town. But get this, contrary to popular belief, oil accounts for less than 1% of Dubai's GDP today. No way, right? If you think this city was built just by pumping endless streams of cash out of the ground, you are missing one of the most deliberate, incredible economic stories in modern history.
When we break down their official economy, it's actually incredibly diversified. Trade makes up a massive 26%, transport is sitting at 12%, finance it's 10%, and tourism is at 5%. All of these core industries completely dwarf that tiny 1% sliver of oil. But while these financial statements are technically true today, they're also kind of misleading. To uncover the real story and to figure out exactly how they built this diverse portfolio out of thin air, we really have to look back at their desperate beginning. So that brings us to our first major chapter, the Pearl Crash Pivot. Think of this like the origin story of a scrappy tech startup fighting for its life. Back in the early 1900s, Dubai was basically a one-trick pony. The entire population relied on one single industry, pearl diving. But then the 1920s hit. A Japanese entrepreneur named Kokichi Mikimoto invented cultured pearls, and that abruptly flooded the global market with cheap, perfectly round gems. Combine that with the Great Depression, and the price of natural pearls crashed by 90%. Dubai was plunged into a famine so severe that people were literally documented eating locusts just to survive. The ruling Al Maktoum family realized they were on the brink of total collapse. They had to make a radical choice.
Instead of just closing their borders like a lot of their neighbors did, they completely rewrote the playbook. They acted exactly like a startup executing a massive pivot. Step 1. Drop taxes on imports and exports to practically zero. They realized, hey, if we can't produce a valuable product ourselves, we'll become the ultimate frictionless middleman. They started enticing merchants from all over the region to trade through their ports instead.
And they didn't stop there. Throughout the 60s and 70s, under Sheikh Rashid, Dubai took these massive, highly leveraged gambles to support this pivot. They moved incredibly fast. He built an international airport in 1960. By 1961, he borrowed heavily, even getting a personal loan from the Emir of Kuwait just to dredge the muddy Dubai Creek so larger ships could dock right in the city center. Then came Port Rashid in 72 and the massive Jebel Ali port in 79. He was laying the foundation for all this critical infrastructure long before any real wealth ever arrived. Which leads us directly into our next era, oil as seed capital. Oil was finally discovered in 1966. But it functioned way more like a temporary cash injection.
When Dubai did find oil, it was honestly just a drop in the bucket compared to their super wealthy neighbor and kind of their angel investor, Abu Dhabi. The dynamic here is absolutely key. Abu Dhabi is the conservative, tremendously wealthy capital of the UAE, and they hold roughly 95% of the country's nearly 100 billion barrels of oil. Dubai, the flashy, scrappy neighbor, holds a tiny, tiny fraction of that. They were handed a very small window of resource wealth, and they knew for sure it wouldn't last.
Unlike other petrostates who could just sit back and rely on black gold for generations, Dubai poured that seed funding straight into massive physical expansion. They treated the oil money like venture capital to massively upgrade projects like Port Jebel Ali. And thanks to that strategic reinvestment, Jebel Ali is now the 11th busiest port in the entire world. It moves tens of millions of shipping containers a year and acts as a vital logistical bridge between the East and the West.
But look, infrastructure alone doesn't guarantee a booming economy. Let's move to the next phase, marketing a mirage.
To actually get global corporations into those new ports, they launched the Jubal Ali Free Zone, or JAFZA, in 1985, and they offered a package of perks that was absolutely unheard of in the Middle East. We're talking 100% foreign ownership with no local partner required, 0 corporate taxes, 0 personal income taxes, and 100% profit repatriation. That meant foreign companies could send all the money they made straight back to their home countries without paying a dime in local penalties. It was literally designed to be a business paradise.
And honestly, the strategy worked beyond their wildest dreams. That single free zone currently hosts over 11,000 businesses. Over the last 2 decades, it has generated an astounding 1 million direct and indirect jobs. Plus, it pulled in over $30 billion in foreign direct investment. That's basically overseas corporate cash pouring straight into the local Dubai economy. To keep all that momentum going, they started building these seemingly impossible mega projects. You know those wild influencer photos you always see from Dubai? This was the exact strategy designed to make that happen. The billion-dollar Burj Al Arab, the famous 7-star hotel, and those artificial Palm Islands weren't just vanity projects. They were multi-billion-dollar global marketing stunts meant to put Dubai permanently on the map, drive massive tourism, and skyrocket local real estate demand.
But growing at the speed of light, especially on credit, comes with immense risk. We've hit the climax of our story, the 2008 plot twist. Now, the ruler of Dubai famously promised they would never adopt an income tax as a way to tackle a deficit. It was literally their biggest selling point. But that steadfast anti-tax stance collided violently with reality in 2008. When global credit dried up, Dubai's massively over-leveraged real estate bubble burst. Property values plummeted by 50% practically overnight. Construction just stopped. Expatriates were literally abandoning their luxury cars at the airport with the keys still in the ignition just to flee their unpayable debts.
Because behind that glittering, futuristic skyline was a pretty ugly truth. Dubai had quietly racked up a staggering $79 billion debt load, with absolutely 0 income tax revenue to fall back on and creditors knocking at the door. The city was on the absolute brink of a catastrophic sovereign default. That's essentially when a country goes completely bankrupt, runs out of cash, and just cannot pay back its global lenders.
So that whole idea of Dubai's oil independence, it was suddenly exposed as a bit of a fairy tale. They literally only survived because their wealthy big brother Abu Dhabi bailed them out at the 11th hour with a $10 billion injection of oil money. And there was a highly public, incredibly humbling price to pay for that rescue. The world's tallest building, which was supposed to be named Burj Dubai, was abruptly renamed Burj Khalifa on opening night, honoring the ruler of Abu Dhabi who had just saved them from financial ruin. But, true to their scrappy startup nature, Dubai didn't fold. They restructured their debts, learned from the crash, and entered their current era, survival and sustainability.
Historically, Dubai was kind of like a giant transient ATM, you know? You go there, work tax-free for a few years, and then you leave. But after the 2008 crash, and definitely during the COVID-19 pandemic, leadership realized they desperately needed a permanent population to stabilize the economy. So they pivoted again. They started offering 10-year golden visas, long-term residency permits that let you live and work there without a local Emirati sponsor. By pairing this with acting as a neutral, safe haven bunker during global crises like the Arab Spring or the war in Ukraine, they transformed from a temporary stopover into a permanent home for global wealth.
Now, they're recognizing the next great existential threat and preparing for a post-oil world. If you follow where global capital and anxiety are flowing right now, it all points to climate change. The UAE, having recently hosted the UN Climate Summit COP28, is proactively funding a massive energy transition. They're pouring billions into a low-carbon economic model, including a $13.6 billion solar park aimed at producing 5,000 megawatts by 2030. They're treating the shift to clean energy with the exact same life-or-death urgency they treated their ports back in the 1970s.
From starving pearl divers to a tax-free global haven, from a debt-ridden crash to a sustainable metropolis, Dubai has survived over the last century by constantly reinventing itself and embracing massive risk. But as global temperatures inevitably rise and the world economy shifts away from the oil that still shores up the region's wealth, it leaves us with one final towering question. Can this brilliant, high-risk startup city successfully pull off its ultimate pivot against climate change, or will the sand eventually win? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll leave you to ponder that exact question.